Hi team, we're back and it's Joe and
Abram.
And we're here to talk about how was your stay, or in other words, engaging guests with open-ended questions to make sure we can personalize their stay with us.
Throughout our talk today, we're going to be going over the appropriate times to approach a guest and ask them open-ended questions, including, how was your stay?
So much of what we do is really predicated on making that personal connection with the guest. Remember, we talked about that in our last pre-show. So the open-ended question is the ideal way to do that. And just to get us kind of rolling, I'm going to ask Abram a few questions about asking guests an open-ended question. So Abram, how was your stay? When's the best time to start interjecting that into an interaction?
You know, Joe, I would say interjecting how was your stay is something we should be interjecting as often as we can.
And does it have to be how was your stay? What are our other open-ended questions?
Yeah, of course. How can I help you is a great one. You know, we're not saying you're here to check in, you're here to get dinner. We're asking, how can I help you? Letting them tell us what's happening and going on. A great thing that asking how was your stay and asking how can I help you, or any open-ended question, is that it opens up a possibility for guests to engage with us and tell us exactly how their stay is going. It lets us see if there is anything we could make right, if they're having any issues during their stay with us. It also gives us the opportunity to see if there's any surprise and delight moments where we can surprise and delight them if they're here for an anniversary, a birthday, or graduation.
That's a great point. And one of my favorite open questions is, what brings you to Austin? So again, we're trying to find out what exactly is the reason that our guests are staying with us. We might find out it's for business, for a convention, for a personal event. All of those things are important, how we can personalize a stay for our guests. So Abram, beyond just asking the open-ended question, when we get that information, what's the best things that we can do with it? Let's say that it's all on the good side. It's a guest, it's coming in, it's a birthday or a celebration or an anniversary, and we engage with the guest, we get their name, we have their room number, all those things. Then what do we do?
Well, if it's all positive and we find a way we can surprise and delight, something that all team members can do is go to your department. Each department actually has surprise and delight guidelines where you can look and see, oh, for a birthday, what's something we can do to surprise and delight this guest for their birthday or their anniversary? Again, all departments have it. Go ahead and look at your departments and you can see how we can surprise and delight our guests.
And you know, sometimes we have to have what I like to call service courage. So we know that when we ask an open-ended question, it could go the other way as well. We have to be prepared for that. And we'll talk a little bit more specifically about those tools. But when we find out, Abram, that a guest stay hasn't gone well, then what?
Well then, and this is something we're going to be talking about a little more in a future pre-shift, but at that point, each department also has a make it right guidelines. So you can look on those guidelines for your department, ask your supervisor or manager if you don't know where yours are located. You can look that up and see for certain situations that arise more often than not for that particular department. They have different types of service recovery that can be done to make it right for the guest.
Exactly. But our focus from here on in, at least for the next couple of pre-shifts, is surprise and delight. What are the things that are going to make meaningful connections with our guests? So our guests have told us what it is that brought them here. How can we personalize that stay, make it just a little bit extra special, that it becomes a memory for them for a lifetime? That's the kind of loyalty that we want from our guests, and that's the kind of experience that's going to drive our scores from 3s and 4s to 5s every single time. So when we're talking about our stay experience scores and moving the needle, nothing could be more important than asking those open-ended questions and engaging our guests. So our takeaways today, don't forget, we want to surprise and delight. We want to find those things out about our guest stay that are going to make it possible for us to personalize their stay. But we have to be prepared to understand and listen when things haven't gone right.
That's right, Joe. Another thing to keep in mind when approaching a guest and asking, how was your stay, is to consider approaching them when they seem unoccupied or not busy.
That's exactly right. Understanding body language and the appropriate time to approach a guest makes them more amenable to answering your question. Obviously, a guest that's on a personal phone call or waiting for an elevator or waiting for a friend may be a little bit distracted and not really open to communicate. But a guest that's engaging with you and asking you questions as well, the perfect time to really drop in those open-ended questions. And again, it could be as easy as how was your stay, what brings you to Austin, or what can we do to make your stay just a little bit more special.
You know, it's something that's recommended to integrate into our everyday use with our guests. You know, finding a time in your normal dialogue with guests to ask them, how was your stay? It can just be when they're up, they come up to check in to talk to you. Finding a way to integrate how was your stay into that. If you work at an outlet, if they come up, when they say table for four, as you start to talk to them, don't be afraid to ask them, how's your stay going with us?
Exactly. And that goes for every single team member in every single part of our building. Anytime we're able to engage guests, asking that open-ended question makes it a little bit more of a personal experience. So be sure that we're doing that. And Abram, this week's challenge?
This week's challenge, Joe, we're going to challenge my fellow team members to ask at least 3 guests, how is your stay, at appropriate moments each day. Remind team members who are in the heart of house to look for ways this applies in their new role. They may have minimal interactions with guests, but when they do have an interaction, encourage them to ask, how was your stay?
And if you do that, write it down. Get all of your team's notes, and the team that brings to Abram, B, Sandra, Sophia, anyone in HR, their list of open-ended questions, and more importantly, the responses our guests gave will be entered in the drawing at our next CBR round. So until then, ask those open-ended questions, engage our guests, and we'll see you at our next pre-show.